I discovered A.P. Giannini about 3 years ago through a throwaway line in a biography of Walt Disney. The author mentioned that when Disney was running out of money on Snow White, desperate for a $250,000 loan that nobody would give him, this banker named Giannini watched his rough cut in a dark screening room, sat in complete silence, and then, as he walked to his car, told Disney, "That thing is going to make a hatful of money. We'll take the bonds." And I remember reading that and thinking, who is this guy who watches an unfinished animated film during the Great Depression and immediately writes a check? That's not normal banker behavior. That's not normal human behavior. So I went and searched, and what I found absolutely blew my mind. This is a story about a 7-year-old kid who watched his father get murdered over $1. A kid who dropped out of school at 13 to sell vegetables on the San Francisco waterfront. A kid who became a millionaire at 31 and then retired because he believed that when a man has more money than he needs, he's a slave to his money. And then this same man comes back and builds what becomes the largest bank in the world, but does it in a way nobody had ever done before. He democratized banking. He gave loans to immigrants when other banks wouldn't even let them through the door. He financed the Golden Gate Bridge when nobody else would touch it. He personally rescued his bank's gold during the San Francisco earthquake, hiding it under garbage and oranges, and then was the only banker lending money 2 days later. Every single loan made on a handshake, and every single one got paid back. I spent the last week consuming everything I could find about this man. Biographies, academic papers, old newspaper articles, interviews with his family members. There must be about 100 ideas that jumped out at me, but the thing that keeps hitting me is this. A.P. Giannini built one of the most successful businesses in American history. He died with only $500,000 to his name. He gave away everything. Nearly 40% of Bank of America's shares were owned by employees when he died. He set up profit sharing in 1924, where the bank gave 40% of its net earnings to its workers. Not the executives, the workers, the tellers, the secretaries. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. 40% of net earnings went to employees. He believed that a banker should consider himself a servant of the people, a servant of the community. This is what drives me crazy about studying these people. They all think this way. They all believe that business exists to serve something beyond profit, and they all end up more successful than the people who are just chasing money. Let me tell you this man's story. Amedeo Pietro Giannini was born May 6, 1870, in San Jose, California. His father Luigi had come from a small town near Genoa, Italy, chasing the gold rush of 1849. Luigi didn't find gold in the hills, so he did what millions of immigrants have done. He bought a 40-acre farm and worked it. He grew fruits and vegetables. He worked his hands to the bone. And then, when his son Amedeo was 7 years old, Luigi got into an argument with one of his workers over $2. $2. The worker shot him dead. Think about that for a second. You're 7 years old. You watch your father get killed over the equivalent of maybe $50 today. What does that do to your brain? What does that teach you about money, about violence, about the fragility of everything? Amedeo's mother, Virginia, is left with 2 small children and pregnant with a third. This is 1877. There's no safety net. There's no life insurance. She's an immigrant woman with almost nothing, so she does what she has to do. She runs the farm herself for 3 years, and then in 1880 she marries Lorenzo Scatina, a teamster. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. Scatina tries farming. He's terrible at it. Virginia tells him, "Why don't you try being a commission merchant, buying and selling produce wholesale?" Turns out Scatina is a natural. Within his first month in business, he makes $1,500 profit. That's like $50,000 in today's money. In 1 month. Young Amadeo is watching all of this. He's watching his stepfather read people, read markets, make quick decisions, take calculated risks. He's watching someone who had no business education, no formal training, just instinct and hard work, become wildly successful. At 13, Amadeo drops out of school. He goes to work full-time for his stepfather's produce business. Now listen to what happens. At 17 years old, just 17, he's on a buying trip to Sacramento Valley. He looks at the pear market and he becomes convinced, absolutely convinced, that there's going to be a shortage that autumn. So he buys up every single pear he can get his hands on for future delivery. His stepfather trusts him with this enormous bet. The kid is right. They clear $50,000 profit on pears alone that year. $50,000 in 1887. This is like $1.5 million today. From one bet made by a teenager. By 22, he's running all the buying trips. By 22, he's indispensable. Here's how he describes his work ethic. I used to take a loaf of bread and a big Italian cheese along with me for my lunch and supper. I never aimed to arrive at a place when they were having meals. It would have meant a serious loss of time. Loss of time. That's the phrase. Time was the asset, not the meals, not the comfort. Time. He's obsessed. In 1889, at 19, his stepfather makes him a 1/3 partner in the business. 2 years later, he raises it to 1/2. By 1892, when he's 22, he marries Clorinda Cuneo. Her father is an Italian immigrant who made a fortune in real estate. Between his income from investments and his half-interest in the produce business, Giannini is making about $250 a month. That's comfortable middle-class money. He's 31 years old, and he says, "That's enough. I don't want to be rich." No man actually owns a fortune. It owns him. He sells his interest in the family firm for $100,000 and retires. Retires at 31. This is 1901. Most people at this point would be done. They'd travel, they'd relax, they'd enjoy their money. Giannini is bored out of his mind within a year. In 1902, his father-in-law dies without a will. The family asks Giannini to handle the estate. It's worth about $500,000. Part of the estate includes a seat on the board of Columbus Savings and Loan Society, a small bank in North Beach, San Francisco's Little Italy. Giannini starts attending board meetings. And very quickly he notices something. There's a competitor called Italian American Bank that's growing like crazy by catering to small borrowers, working-class people, immigrants. And Giannini goes to his fellow board members and says, "We should be doing this. We should be serving these people." And they look at him like he's insane. The board had no interest in extending loans to hard-working immigrants. In those days, banks existed mainly to serve businessmen and the wealthy. They're not interested in little deposits. They're not interested in small loans. The paperwork isn't worth it. The risk is too high. These people don't have collateral. Giannini tries to explain to them that these working-class immigrants are creditworthy. He knows them. He grew up with them. He worked with them in the produce business. He knows they'll pay back their loans. The board soundly rebuffs him. So Giannini does what you should do when people won't listen to your idea. He quits. He resigns from the board. He sells his share of Columbus Savings and Loan. And then he raises $150,000 from his stepfather and 10 friends. And on October 17, 1904, he opens the Bank of Italy in a converted saloon directly across the street from Columbus Savings and Loan. I just love this. It's not enough to start his own bank. He starts it directly across the street from the people who said no to him. The first assistant teller, the saloon's bartender. They kept him on. Deposits on the first day totaled $8,780. Within a year, the bank had over $700,000 in deposits. Think about that growth rate, 8,000 to 700,000 in 1 year. How? Because Giannini is doing things nobody else is doing. He's ringing doorbells. He's buttonholing people on the street. He's going into the fields and farms explaining what a bank does. Most of these immigrants had never used a bank before. They kept their money under their mattresses. They had no idea that their money could earn interest. They had no idea they could borrow money to start a business or buy a home. Giannini is patient. He hires employees who speak Italian, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. He moves bank officers from their isolated upstairs offices down into the lobby. He moves tellers out from behind bars. He extends banking hours to evenings and weekends so workers can come after their shifts. He's teaching people how to fill out deposit slips. One of his innovations, and this is so smart, he partners with the city of San Francisco to establish a savings bank for children. Kids can open accounts with 1 penny. 1 penny. He's teaching financial literacy to children. He's creating customers for life. And he's doing something else, revolutionary. He's judging customers not by how much wealth they have, but by the content of their character. He knows these people. He can size them up. Years later, he said, "The old waterfront commission business was a pretty stiff school for men. I used to study them down there, and I suppose I picked up the knack of sizing up men. That skill becomes everything." Then, April 18, 1906 happens, 5:12 a.m. The Great San Francisco earthquake hits. It lasts 42 seconds. But it's not really the earthquake that destroys the city. It's the fire. 80% of San Francisco burns to the ground. 3,000 people die. 225,000 people are left homeless. Giannini is 17 miles south in San Mateo when he feels the shaking. His first thought is, what is happening to my bank? He hitches a team of horses to a borrowed produce wagon. Remember, he used to haul produce in wagons like this as a kid. He drives into San Francisco. It takes him 6 hours. The city is chaos, buildings collapsed, fires everywhere, looters in the streets. He gets to his bank and the safe is still intact, but fire is bearing down on the building. The safe is too heavy to move. So Giannini and a few friends open the safe and start loading everything into the wagon. $2 million in gold, coins, and securities. They cover it all with a layer of oranges and vegetables. Then they cover that with garbage. Some accounts say he borrowed a garbage wagon from a man whose family came from the same part of Italy. The man's name was Giambattista Cipollina. Later, as thanks, Giannini will give this man's son his first job when he turns 14. That's the kind of man he is. He remembers. He drives the wagon back to San Mateo and hides everything in his chimney. His bank burns down with the rest of the city. But he has the money. While other bankers are scrambling, while other banks are announcing 6-month moratoriums on lending so they can sort out the damage, Giannini is setting up a temporary desk on Washington Street wharf. 2 barrels and a plank of wood. That's his desk. He puts a bag of gold on the desk and proclaims, "We're going to rebuild San Francisco." He starts making loans on a face and a signature. That's it. No paperwork, no collateral. Most people have lost their identification in the fires. He's making loans based on knowing these people, trusting these people. Every single loan gets paid back, every single one. This is what I mean about character. He wasn't naive. He knew who to trust. He knew these people would rebuild. And here's what that does. In the middle of absolute catastrophe, in the middle of people losing everything, here's one man saying, "I believe in you. I trust you. Here's money to rebuild your life. The psychological impact of that is enormous. Within 6 weeks, deposits at Bank of Italy exceeded withdrawals. Think about that. 6 weeks after the worst disaster in the city's history, people are putting more money into his bank than they're taking out. Why? Because they trust him. Because he was there when nobody else was. This is one of those hinge moments. This is where Giannini becomes legendary. Now the 1907 panic hits a year later. Most banks are caught off guard, but Giannini had seen it coming on a trip to the East Coast. So Bank of Italy spent the months before the panic building up reserves of gold. When the crisis comes, Bank of Italy is one of the few banks that can issue its banknotes and receive deposits while still honoring redemptions for gold. Other banks have to impose limits. Bank of Italy thrives where others fail. Giannini tells his team, "None of us will back any promotion, even though the profits look big and sure. None of us will ever speculate in securities. We will keep clean, keep clear, and attend solely to the business of banking. Then, if any disaster or general business depression arises, we can concentrate our efforts for the benefit of those who have deposited their money with us or have bought our stock. This is discipline. This is saying no to easy money. This is playing the long game." In 1909, Giannini has an idea that's going to change American banking forever. Branch banking. At this time, banks are limited to single locations. One bank, one building, one city. Giannini looks at California and sees all these small towns, all these farmers, all these communities that need banking services. Why can't one bank serve all of them? The legislature passes a law allowing branch banking. Giannini immediately starts buying banks throughout California and converting them into branches of Bank of Italy. His first branch outside San Francisco opens in 1909 in San Jose, his hometown. By 1916, he has several branches. By 1918, Bank of Italy is the first statewide branch banking system in the United States. Other bankers hate this. The old guard thinks it's un-American. What do Italians know about banks, they say? What does a farmer know? But Giannini's onto something profound. He believes branch banking stabilizes banks during difficult times. If one region is struggling, other regions can support it. It's diversification, it's smart risk management, and it works. His bank survives when others collapse. Here's his philosophy. You can't afford to sit back and wait for talent to come to you. You have to be constantly on the lookout for it, and then go out and lasso it. He's aggressively hiring the best people. He's building an organization, not just a bank. He's obsessed with training, with culture, with making sure every branch operates with the same principles. A banker should consider himself a servant of the people, a servant of the community. He says this over and over and over again. In 1921, Giannini does something radical. He establishes a department at the bank focused entirely on women. He calls it the Women's Bank. It's the only bank in the nation run entirely by women. Female staff offer evening classes to help customers learn how to save, borrow, and invest their money wisely. This is 1921, 1 year after women get the right to vote. Most banks won't even let women open accounts without a male co-signer. Giannini is putting women in charge of a whole division. He's teaching them financial independence. Why? Because he sees an underserved market. He sees people who need banking services and aren't getting them. This is the pattern. Over and over, Giannini looks for the people being ignored, and he serves them. By 1929, Bank of Italy has over 400 banking offices in California. It's enormous. In 1927, Giannini had started acquiring a second network of branch banks and unified them under a new name, Bank of America of California. In 1928, he creates a holding company called Transamerica Corporation for all his banking interests. And then in 1930, he merges Bank of Italy and Bank of America of California into what becomes Bank of America National Trust and Savings Association. The name Bank of America. He chose it deliberately. Not Bank of Italy anymore. Bank of America. For all America. For all Americans. For everyone. Now let me tell you about 1930, because this is where you see who Giannini really is. He retires. He's 60 years old. The bank is thriving. He hands control to someone he trusts and moves to Europe. He thinks he's done. But a year later, in the middle of the Great Depression, his successor starts implementing conservative policies. He's closing branches. He's cutting back on lending. He's doing what most bankers do in a crisis, which is hunker down and protect the bank. Giannini is furious. This goes against everything he believes. He comes roaring back from Europe. He's 61 years old and he wages a proxy fight to retake control of the bank. Here's the beautiful thing. He had always encouraged employees and depositors to become shareholders. Remember that profit-sharing plan I mentioned? Part of it involved employees acquiring bank stock. So when he needs to win this proxy fight, he knocks on doors again. He goes to all those working-class shareholders, the tellers, the farmers, the small business owners, the immigrants, and he gets their votes. He wins. He takes back control. And what does he do? He tells his executives, "You are not to let the recent market slump change our plans. Go ahead with the work as if nothing had happened." While the rest of the country is paralyzed by fear, Giannini is expanding. His eyes are on the constructive work of establishing a transcontinental bank rather than on the stock ticker. This is vision. This is refusing to be controlled by short-term panic. He's thinking decades ahead. During the Depression, Giannini does something that gives me chills. He goes on a public campaign urging citizens to put their money in any bank they could, not just his, any bank. He wants money to work for the community at large. Deposits could help build homes, farms, schools. They'd yield jobs. He uses slogans like, "Back to good times," and "California can lead the nation." He's trying to restart the entire economy by rebuilding confidence. Most bankers are thinking about their own bank. Giannini is thinking about the system. He understands that if the banking system collapses, his bank collapses too. Rising tide lifts all boats. But he's also genuinely concerned about people. Around this time, he's watching employees and small investors borrow money at usurious rates to speculate in his stock. It's 1928. The market is going crazy. And Giannini issues a press release warning investors to pay off their debts and get out of the market. "We want them to own their own shares outright," he says. "We do not want them held as security for loans. We want our stockholders so firmly entrenched that they cannot be forced to sell out at some unfavorable time." 2 weeks later, he sends an open letter to banks and brokerage firms across the country, urging them to refrain from making loans on his company's stock when the obvious intention was speculation. "The public is attributing to me miracle-working powers which I do not have." Think about what he's doing here. He's literally telling people not to speculate in his own stock. He's trying to protect them from themselves. Who does that? More than once, after a sharp rise in the market, he would walk through the bank floors saying to employees, "Don't let it fool you. Sell some stock now. Don't wait to sell at a big price and lose your profit." He knew what was coming. He knew the crash was inevitable. Let me tell you about his relationship with Walt Disney, because it perfectly captures Giannini's philosophy. It's 1937. Disney has been working on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs for 4 years. It's the first full-length animated feature film ever attempted. Hollywood calls it Disney's folly. Everyone thinks he's going to go bankrupt. Disney has already mortgaged his house. He's taken out multiple loans from Bank of America. The original budget was $300,000. The final cost is going to be about $1.5 million, a massive sum for any film in 1937, let alone an animated one. Halfway through production, Disney needs another $250,000 or the film doesn't get finished. Bank of America executives are nervous. They've already loaned too much, so they insist on seeing what they're paying for. Joseph Rosenberg, the bank's vice president who makes loans to movie studios, comes to the Disney studio. Disney shows him the rough cut. Most of it isn't even finished. There are pencil sketches instead of completed animation. Disney is terrified. He's trying to make excuses, trying to explain what the finished product will look like. Rosenberg sits through the whole thing in complete silence. When it's over, he gets up, doesn't say a word, walks out to his car with Disney following him nervously. Right before Rosenberg drives away, he turns to Disney and says, "Walt, that thing is going to make a hatful of money. We got the loan." Disney said later, "On the appointed day, I sat alone with Joe Rosenberg, watching those bits and pieces on a screen, trying to sell him $250,000 worth of faith. After the lights came on, he didn't show the slightest reaction to what he'd just seen. He just walked out of the projection room, remarked that it was a nice day, and yawned. Then he turned to me and said, 'Walt, that picture will make a pot of money. We got the loan.'" Snow White premieres December 21, 1937. Standing ovation. It becomes the most successful motion picture of 1938. By May 1939, it's grossed $6.5 million, making it the most successful sound film made to date. Adjusted for inflation, it's still one of the highest-grossing animated films of all time. Bank of America had financed over 500 films by 1952 for over $500 million. Mary Pickford, Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, Frank Capra, who some say based It's a Wonderful Life on Giannini's story. The motion picture industry in California doesn't exist without A.P. Giannini. He saw potential where others saw risk. He had conviction. Same thing with the Golden Gate Bridge. It's 1932, depths of the Depression. Joseph Strauss has been trying to build a bridge across the Golden Gate for 14 years. He needs $35 million. Nobody will lend him the money. The bonds won't sell. The district that's supposed to build the bridge is nearly broke. Strauss goes to Giannini as a last resort. He explains his 14-year struggle. He explains how the bridge will help the San Francisco economy. Giannini listens. Then he says, "We'll take the bonds. We need the bridge." Bank of America buys $6 million worth of bonds, allowing construction to get underway. Strauss asks Giannini how long the bridge might last. Giannini says, "Forever." Without Giannini's assistance, the Golden Gate Bridge probably never gets built. He's financing the future of California. He's thinking about infrastructure. He's thinking about what makes communities thrive. During World War II, he bankrolls industrialist Henry Kaiser and his enterprises supporting the war effort. After the war, he visits Italy and arranges loans to help rebuild the Fiat factories. He provides capital to William Hewlett and David Packard to help form Hewlett-Packard. He's everywhere. He's supporting the industries that will define the next 50 years. Agriculture, motion pictures, technology. He's not waiting for opportunities to come to him, he's creating them. Now let me tell you about his philosophy on wealth, because this is what separates him from almost everyone else. As far back as 1923, Giannini is turning over in his mind an idea for liberalizing the extra compensation plan for the bank's working force. "It is my wish to leave the control of the bank in the hands of its employees," he tells a magazine. In 1924, the plan is announced. The bank annually sets aside 40% of its net earnings as a gift to its workers. 40%. Not stock options, not bonuses tied to individual performance. A gift. The employees own the bank. There are not many men in this cynical old world of ours who could come out with a statement to their stockholders saying that they have borrowed shares of stock from stockholders to maintain the price of the securities at a sane level, then ask the holders to waive their rights to a big block of new stock issued and get away with it. But Giannini does, because people trust him. At the time of his death, nearly 40% of Bank of America's shares were owned by its employees. His philosophy is simple. Those who don't work never amount to anything. It is every man's duty to strive to give his children the best possible equipment for life. But to leave millions to young sons is dangerous. To take from anyone the incentive to work is a questionable service. He's thought deeply about this. He doesn't want to create entitled heirs. He wants to create opportunity. He dies June 3, 1949, at age 79. His personal estate is modest, about $500,000. Everything else went to employees, went to the bank, went to foundations. On his 75th birthday, he had created and endowed the A.P. Giannini Foundation with nearly $500,000 to support innovative research in basic sciences and applied fields. Since then, the foundation has funded over 900 postdoctoral biomedical researchers at California's medical schools. He's still saving lives decades after his death. The bank he founded? By his death, it has more than 500 branches and over $6 billion in deposits. It's the largest bank in the country. Today, it's the second largest bank in the United States with over $2.5 trillion in assets. But here's what gets me. Read any history of Bank of America today, and Giannini barely gets mentioned. The bank merged with Nations Bank in 1998. Nations Bank was technically the survivor, but they took the Bank of America name because it was so iconic. But the culture? The philosophy? The idea that a banker should be a servant of the people? That's mostly gone. Modern Bank of America is a typical Wall Street bank, which makes me sad because Giannini proved you could build the biggest bank in the world while actually serving people. You could be profitable and principled. You could create enormous value for shareholders while sharing that value with everyone. I want to circle back to something because it connects to so many other founders I've studied. Giannini says, money itch is a bad thing. I never had that trouble. Compare that to Andrew Carnegie, who said the man who dies rich dies disgraced. Compare it to Warren Buffett, who's giving away 99% of his wealth. Compare it to Yvon Chouinard giving away Patagonia. There's a pattern here. The people who build the most durable businesses, the ones that last generations, they're not motivated primarily by money. They're motivated by building something, by serving people, by solving problems. Giannini said, "There is no fun in working merely for money. I like to do things, to be a builder." That word, builder, not investor, not financier, builder. He sees himself as creating things that didn't exist before. Branch banking, home mortgages for working-class people, auto loans, profit sharing, employee ownership. These are innovations. These are constructions. He's building the financial infrastructure of the 20th century, and he's doing it by ignoring conventional wisdom at every turn. Everyone said you can't make money lending to immigrants. He proved them wrong. Everyone said branch banking was un-American. He proved them wrong. Everyone said you can't finance movies or bridges or new technologies during the Depression. He proved them wrong. Over and over, he sees what others can't see or won't see. One of his quotes that I love: "I thrive on obstacles, particularly obstacles placed in my way by narrow-gauged competitors and their political friends." He's energized by resistance. He sees obstruction as confirmation that he's onto something. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. His advice on finding talent is also brilliant. You'll find a lot of the big guns will pay attention when they want something. They will use you when you get big enough for their purposes, and a lot of people fall for that stuff. The fellows at the top of the ladder will leave you alone till you get there on top. Then they will become interested only for what they can get out of you, not for what they can give you. Some exceptions, yes. Not many, though. He understands human nature. He understands that most people are transactional, so he builds differently. He builds relationships based on service, based on trust, based on giving value first. Another insight: how can people know what a bank can and will do for them unless they're told? This sounds simple, but it's profound. Most bankers in his era assumed that if people needed banking services, they'd come ask for them. Giannini understands that most immigrants, most working-class people, don't even know what's possible. They don't know they can save money and earn interest. They don't know they can borrow money to buy a home. They don't know banks can help them start businesses. So he educates, he markets, he goes door to door explaining what banks do. This is meeting people where they are. This is empathy. One more. The man who will fight hard to get cheaper interest rates is one that we want to loan money to, and if he is willing to pay any old price, look out. Think about what he's saying. Someone who fights for a better deal, who negotiates, who's careful with money, that's the person you want as a customer. Someone who doesn't care what they pay, that's a red flag. They're not thinking long-term. They're not managing risk. This is counterintuitive. Most lenders love customers who'll pay anything. But Giannini is looking for partners, not transactions. He's looking for people who will succeed over the long haul. I mentioned earlier that he judged customers by the content of their character. Let me expand on that because it's central to everything. Giannini came up in the produce business. He learned to size up men on the San Francisco waterfront. That was a rough place. You had to judge quickly whether someone would pay you, whether they'd deliver what they promised, whether they were honest. That skill translated directly to banking. When other bankers required collateral, proof of income, references, all this bureaucracy, Giannini could look someone in the eye and know. This is pattern recognition at the highest level. It's developed over decades of dealing with thousands of people. And here's the key. He was usually right. Those loans after the earthquake? Paid back. The loans to small businesses and farmers? Paid back. The loans to Walt Disney, to the film industry, to Kaiser, to Hewlett and Packard? Paid back with interest. He had conviction in his ability to judge people, and he was willing to back that conviction with money. This is what courage looks like in business. Not recklessness, not gambling. Courage is having a belief based on deep experience and acting on it even when others think you're crazy. One thing I haven't mentioned yet. Giannini lived through catastrophe after catastrophe. He watched his father get murdered. He survived the 1906 earthquake and fire. He survived the 1907 panic. He survived World War I. He survived the 1929 crash and the Great Depression. He survived World War II. And every single time his response was the same: build, lend, serve, keep going. When other people were paralyzed by fear, Giannini was working. After the earthquake, when other bankers shut down, he's on the wharf with his plank and barrels making loans. During the Depression, when other banks are closing branches, he's expanding. During World War II, when everything is uncertain, he's financing the war effort and planning for peace. This is unshakable faith in human resilience. This is believing that people will rebuild, will create, will persist. That faith isn't naive. It's earned through decades of watching people surprise him, watching them repay loans they had no collateral for, watching them build businesses from nothing. He saw the best in people, and because he saw it, he helped bring it out. There's a quote from the biography that hit me. Giannini was fond of calling Bank of America employees his boys and girls. Today that sounds paternalistic. But in context, what he meant was family. He knew their names. He knew their families. When he walked through the bank floors, he'd stop and talk to people. He'd ask about their lives. He made it a point to stay connected to the people doing the actual work. This matters because as companies grow, founders often lose touch with the ground level. They move into executive suites. They make decisions from spreadsheets. Giannini never did that. He started on the San Francisco waterfront selling vegetables, and he never forgot what that was like. He never forgot that the teller at the window was someone's son or daughter, someone trying to build a life. That's why the profit sharing mattered so much to him. It wasn't charity. It was belief that everyone who contributed to the bank's success should share in that success. It was recognizing that the bank didn't exist without those people. Let me tie this all together because there's a lesson here that applies to anyone building anything. Giannini built the largest bank in the world by doing the opposite of what other bankers did. Other banks served the wealthy. He served the poor. Other banks wanted collateral. He made loans on character. Other banks stayed in one location. He built branches everywhere. Other banks hoarded profits. He shared them. Other banks closed during crises. He stayed open and lent more. Every single decision he made went against conventional banking wisdom, and every single decision proved conventional wisdom wrong. This is the power of first principles thinking. Giannini asked, "What should a bank do?" And his answer was, serve the community, help people build better lives, enable commerce, provide credit to people who'll use it productively. Once you have that foundation, all your decisions flow from it. You don't need to copy what other banks do. You're operating from a different framework entirely. This is why studying great founders is so valuable. They show you that the standard way of doing things is just one option. There are always other paths. The question is, do you have the courage to take them? Giannini did. He was the son of murdered immigrant. He dropped out of school at 13. He had no formal banking education. He had no connections to the financial elite. Everything was stacked against him. And he built the largest bank in the world by staying true to a simple philosophy. Serve people, build community, share success. Over and over he demonstrated that doing the right thing was also doing the profitable thing. That you didn't have to choose between principles and profit. That actually, principles led to profit because they built trust, built loyalty, built something that lasted. When I think about Giannini, I think about that moment 2 days after the earthquake. Everyone's lost everything. The city is burning. And here's this banker, this one man, sitting at a plank on some barrels with a bag of gold saying, "I believe in you. Here's money. Rebuild." That image captures everything. It's courage, it's faith, it's service. It's a refusal to accept that disaster is the end. Giannini understood something profound. Capital by itself doesn't create anything. It's the people who use capital that create things. His job wasn't to hoard money. His job was to find the right people and give them the resources to build. That's what banking should be. That's what he did for 45 years. And because of that, millions of people got homes. Thousands of businesses got started. The Golden Gate Bridge got built. The film industry thrived. California became the economic engine it is today. One man, one simple philosophy. Change millions of lives. Here's what drives me absolutely crazy. We live in an era where banks are vilified. And honestly, often for good reason. The 2008 financial crisis, the fees, the foreclosures, the scandals. Banks today feel predatory. They feel like they're extracting value, not creating it. But it didn't have to be this way. Giannini proved that banking could be a force for good, that you could be the largest bank in the world and actually help people. The tragedy is that his philosophy has been mostly lost. When I read about modern Bank of America, I see a bank that's nothing like what he built. The culture of service is gone. The idea of the banker as a public servant is gone. The profit sharing at those levels is definitely gone. It's been replaced by quarterly earnings pressure, by shareholder primacy, by the religion of maximizing returns at all costs. And look, I'm not naive about business. Businesses need to be profitable. Shareholders should get returns. But Giannini showed you could do all that while also taking care of employees, while also serving communities, while also building for the long term. It's not either or, it's both. And the people who tell you that you have to choose between doing well and doing good, they're lying to you. Or they're not creative enough to figure out how to do both. Giannini did both for decades. Let me tell you one more story because it perfectly illustrates his priorities. In 1945, he's 75 years old. He's been building this bank for 41 years. He's chairman of the board. Someone suggests that maybe they should raise his salary. Maybe he should be compensated more in line with the heads of other major banks. Giannini refuses. He's making around $40,000 a year, which is good money, but nothing compared to what other bank CEOs make. He says he doesn't need more. His philosophy is that he's already wealthy enough. Beyond a certain point, more money doesn't add anything to his life. He's got enough to live comfortably. He's got enough to provide for his family. More would just be numbers on a page. This is not false modesty. This is genuine belief. A year before that, in 1944, Bank of America throws him a big party for his 75th birthday. There are tributes from all over the country. The governor of California shows up. Top executives, politicians, journalists, everyone celebrating this titan of finance. And Giannini gives a speech where he says, "I have had my fun." That's it. I have had my fun. Not I have made my fortune. Not I have built my empire. I have had my fun. The fun was in the building. The fun was in the serving. The fun was in seeing people succeed because his bank gave them a chance. This is joy rooted in contribution, not accumulation. He continues, "I have had the privilege of feeling I was helping others to greater success than I ever attained. Every single one of those 40 or 50 executives in this organization, nearly every branch manager I know personally and have had the pleasure of helping. The source of satisfaction is not his own wealth, it's other people's success. It's the businesses that grew because of his loans. It's the families that bought homes. It's the employees who built careers and accumulated wealth through profit sharing. That's what he measures." Compare this to the modern CEO mindset. How many CEOs today would say their greatest satisfaction is in helping others achieve more than they did? Most are hyper-focused on their own compensation, their own legacy, their own status. And I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm saying the incentives are different. The culture is different. We've created a system where CEOs are rewarded for short-term stock price increases, not for long-term value creation. Where they're rewarded for cutting costs, not for investing in people. Where they're rewarded for financial engineering, not for serving customers. Giannini operated in a different paradigm. He was playing an infinite game. He wasn't trying to maximize his wealth in his lifetime. He was trying to build an institution that would serve California and eventually America forever. That's a completely different orientation, and it affected every single decision. When you're building for forever, you invest in people, you invest in relationships, you invest in reputation. You don't cut corners, you don't squeeze customers, you don't view employees as expenses to be minimized. You view them as partners in building something great. This long-term thinking is what separates great founders from everyone else. Steve Jobs wasn't thinking about next quarter's earnings. He was thinking about what product would exist in 5 years. Jeff Bezos wasn't worried about being profitable in Amazon's first decade. He was worried about building infrastructure that could last 50 years. Elon Musk isn't optimizing for next year's stock price. He's optimizing for making humans multiplanetary. Giannini wasn't worried about beating last quarter's profit. He was worried about whether working-class families could buy homes and start businesses. These people all share the same trait: infinite time horizon. They're building for decades, not quarters. Now let me address something because I think it's important. Some people might hear this story and think, well, that was a different era. You can't do business that way anymore. Competition is too fierce. Margins are too thin. Regulations are too complex. It's easy to be generous when you're the only game in town. I think that's completely wrong. First, Giannini had massive competition. There were hundreds of banks in California when he started. The big New York banks were trying to expand west. He wasn't operating in a vacuum. He won by outserving everyone else. Second, he survived multiple depressions, 2 world wars, countless financial panics. The idea that our era is uniquely challenging is narcissistic. Every era is challenging. Third, profit sharing and employee ownership are more viable today than ever. The technology exists to make it seamless. The problem isn't feasibility. The problem is will. Most CEOs and boards don't want to share ownership. They want to keep it concentrated. That's a choice, not a necessity. Finally, look at companies that do operate with Giannini-style principles. Costco treats employees incredibly well, and they're massively profitable. Patagonia built a cult brand by caring about sustainability and workers. Gravity Payments, the credit card processor, set a minimum salary of $70,000 for all employees, and they thrived. It's possible, it's just rare. Because most people aren't willing to think differently. Most people copy what everyone else does and then wonder why they get the same mediocre results. Giannini didn't copy, he invented. I want to talk about one more thing. The difference between being the best in the world at what you do versus being the only one doing what you do. Giannini was the only one banking the way he banked. Nobody else was ringing doorbells in immigrant neighborhoods explaining how savings accounts work. Nobody else was making loans based on handshakes after earthquakes. Nobody else was financing movies and bridges during depressions. He created a category of one. And when you're a category of one, you don't really have competitors. You have imitators maybe, but by the time they copy you, you've moved on to the next thing. This is how you build lasting competitive advantage, not by being a little better at what everyone else does, by doing something nobody else is doing. Giannini understood this instinctively. He didn't study other banks and try to beat them at their own game. He asked different questions. How do I serve people nobody's serving? How do I build trust in communities that distrust banks? How do I create a system that scales but stays personal? These are the right questions. Once you ask the right questions, the answers often become obvious. But most people never ask the questions because they're too busy copying the competition. There's another element to this that I find fascinating. Giannini had an almost supernatural sense of timing. He opens his bank 2 years before the San Francisco earthquake. That disaster becomes the making of his reputation. He expands into branch banking right before the auto age creates demand for banking outside city centers. He consolidates banks during the 20s, preparing for the Depression. He finances the film industry just as Hollywood is becoming a global force. He backs Kaiser's wartime industries at exactly the right moment. Is this luck? Maybe some of it. But I think it's mostly pattern recognition and courage. He saw trends early because he was paying attention. He talked to people. He listened. He asked questions. And then when he saw an opportunity, he moved. No hesitation. No analysis, paralysis. Just conviction and action. This combination of vision and execution is so rare. Lots of people can see the future. Very few can build it. I keep coming back to that line. I never had money itch. I think this might be the most important thing to understand about Giannini. His motivation wasn't money. So he couldn't be corrupted by money. He couldn't be distracted by money. He couldn't be controlled by people offering him money. This gave him incredible freedom. When you don't need more money, you can make decisions based purely on what's right, what serves customers, what builds the business, what helps employees. You're not wrestling with this internal conflict between greed and principle. There's no conflict. The principle is the point. This is why I believe studying history is so valuable. We're taught by modern culture that the way to succeed in business is to maximize profit, cut costs, optimize everything, squeeze every dollar. And then you study someone like Giannini and you realize that's not just wrong, it's backwards. He built the biggest bank in the world by doing the opposite. By sharing profit. By investing in people. By serving the poorest customers. By thinking long-term. Everything we're taught is wrong. The people who build things that last, they're all doing the opposite of conventional wisdom. That's the pattern. So if you want to build something great, study what everyone else is doing, and then do the opposite, not arbitrarily. Do the opposite, because you've thought through first principles and you realize the conventional way doesn't make sense. That's what Giannini did. Everyone said banks exist to serve the wealthy. He said no, banks exist to serve everyone. Everyone said you can't make money on small deposits and loans. He said, watch me. Everyone said you need collateral for loans. He said character matters more. He was right. They were wrong. End of story. Let me bring this home. AP. Giannini was born in 1870 and died in 1949. His life spanned from Reconstruction to the nuclear age. He lived through unimaginable change, and through all of it, he stuck to simple principles: serve people, build community, share success, judge character, think long-term. Those principles built the largest bank in the world and helped millions of people build better lives. They're the same principles that would work today. They're timeless. The question is whether you have the courage to apply them, whether you're willing to be the only person doing things differently, whether you can resist the pressure to copy everyone else, whether you can delay gratification and build for decades instead of quarters, whether you believe that doing right and doing well are compatible. Giannini proved they are. He proved it for 45 years. He proved it through multiple crises. He proved it by building something that outlasted him. That's legacy. That's what it means to build something that matters, not the money you accumulate, the lives you improve, the opportunities you create, the people you help succeed. That's the game. That's what Giannini understood. And that's why, 75 years after his death, his story still matters. Because we need more people who think like this. We need more people who view business as service, who view wealth as responsibility, who view success as shared. Giannini was one. He showed us what's possible. The question is, who's going to be next? If you take one thing away from this, take this. Giannini dropped out of school at 13. He had no banking education. He had no elite connections. He was the son of murdered immigrant. Everything was stacked against him. And he built the largest bank in the world by staying true to his principles. Which means anyone can do this. Not everyone, but anyone. The tools don't matter as much as the mindset. The resources don't matter as much as the vision. The background doesn't matter as much as the work ethic. What matters is whether you're solving real problems for real people, whether you're building something that improves lives, whether you're thinking long-term and staying true to your values. Do that, and success becomes almost inevitable. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this year, but eventually. Because people recognize when someone genuinely cares. They recognize when someone's in it for the right reasons. And they reward that with their trust, their loyalty, their business. That's what Giannini figured out on the San Francisco waterfront over 100 years ago. And it's still true today. It'll be true 100 years from now. The principles don't change. Only the application does. So take Giannini's example. Find the people everyone else is ignoring. Solve the problems everyone else thinks are too small. Build for the long term when everyone else is optimizing for next quarter. Share success when everyone else is hoarding it. Judge character when everyone else is demanding collateral. And most importantly, remember that money is just a tool. The point isn't to accumulate it. The point is to use it to build something that matters. Something that lasts. Something that helps people. That's what A.P. Giannini did. That's what made him one of the greatest entrepreneurs in American history. And that's why we're still talking about him today. I'm going to end with something that I think beautifully captures who he was. Near the end of his life, someone asked Giannini what he wanted his legacy to be. He didn't talk about Bank of America. He didn't talk about being the largest bank. He didn't talk about his wealth or his accomplishments. He said, "I hope people remember that I believed in them, that I gave them a chance when nobody else would, that I thought every person deserved dignity and opportunity. That's what I want to be remembered for." And you know what? That's exactly what he should be remembered for. Because that belief changed millions of lives. That belief built California. That belief showed that business could be a force for good in the world. We need more people like A.P. Giannini. People who see potential in everyone. People who measure success by the lives they improve, not the money they make. People who build for forever, not for next quarter. People who understand that serving others is the path to building something great. He proved it's possible. He proved it works. He proved that the highest form of business is service. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, if it inspired you, if it changed how you think about business and success, then my job is done. Go read more about Giannini. Go study his life. Go apply his principles. And then go build something that matters. Something that lasts. Something that makes people's lives better. That's how we honor his legacy.